I love this saying which goes, in times of change, learners inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. So that is Eric Hoffer. And let's talk about transitional and transformative thinking. What is that all about? What should the leader be doing? Because you know what, things are changing around us. It's just like weather. When the weather is bad, it's bad. There's nothing you can do about it. Change is coming and it's unavoidable. So when trying to oppose change is like just trying to oppose the weather. What do you say about change, transformative thinking and transformational thinking?
Well, I think the point about it, before I answer that question, is the recognition. I think here's the big problem, Jonah. And, the reason I think many leaders, whether business, political, or social leaders, find themselves suffering this thing called stress, and I've suffered it often enough to know what it feels like, is because
every one of us suffers from stress.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. I think it's because we live with the illusion of control.
Right.
And that's important. You have the illusion of control. You don't really have control. When you get in your car and drive to the office, you think you're in control of the time it's going to take you to get to the office. You're not really. Yeah. Depends on whether or not there's a traffic stop. It depends on whether or not there's a traffic buildup. It depends on whether or not there's some sort of external, unanticipated event that might either make your journey longer or shorter.
Yeah,
true. So I think that the real issue is we've trained leaders to behave as if they have control.
Yeah.
You don't have control. You have power. And those two things are different. Right. So power is about the mechanism as the input. I have power over how I behave. I have power over how I structure the business. I have power over our strategy. I have power over how I hire, how I reward. I have power over those mechanics. But I have zero control over how those mechanics create a market outcome. Zero control. That is up to the market. Now, your point about people being equipped and then they find themselves in a world that they're not equipped for is because we come from a time where we've thought about this thing as a control mechanism. I am the CEO. I have control. You don't have control. Okay. The market is control. The regulators have control. Your suppliers have control. Your customers have control. You have power. You have the power to think about how you respond to those things, and how you respond to those things then is a function of whether or not you're going to be a transitional or transformational leader. And those are different. Transformational leaders recognize that they can fundamentally shift the space they're operating in just by their disposition. Transitional leaders recognize that theirs is to take the organization from one platform to another without rocking the boat. And those two are very, very different. Now, you can't be both. And by the way, shareholders don't want you to be both. I think the greatest bit of insight for shareholders today is the recognition of what kind of leader operates in what kind of environment.
Okay.
Simply said, I am an exponential leader. I'm terrible at linear. I suck at it. So if you're running a large listed business that has been listed for the past 50 years, delivers stable dividend yields, stable free cash flows, and you're looking for 3% growth in market share, I am not your guy. I will rock the boat. It's in my nature too, right? But there are the kind of leaders who come into an organization who are what we call custodian, a steady set of hands who can hold on. And let me give you one final example of this. I penned a piece about 2 weeks ago as an apology to Tim Cook.
Yep.
I, like many people, misunderstood Tim Cook.
Yep.
You saw the piece. I misunderstood Tim Cook. And I think a lot of people who analyze the Apple story and have been following, the thing about the Apple story is the share price and the valuation growth doesn't reflect consumer sentiment. Consumer sentiment says there's no more innovation, the magic of Steve Jobs is gone, Apple is dying. Yet the share price continues to rally. It's reached just peak levels now. It's never seen these kind of levels before. And it's finally pushing on that $1 trillion valuation mark, right? So the question for us to ask ourselves is, what did we miss?
Yeah.
The answer is very simple. Tim Cook is not a transformational leader. That's not his job.
Right.
Tim Cook's the kind of leader you want to meet with Donald Trump.
Right.
Because he understands how to manage complexity, how to manage ego, how not to take things personal. He understands how to endear himself to people he doesn't necessarily like. He's not fiery, he's not emotional, but he's a steady set of hands. Steve Jobs was the inverse. Steve Jobs was fiery, emotional, passionate, and so that kind of guy will build you a massive transformational business and deliver huge exponential results. Recognize that the genius of the shareholders of Apple has been they knew which CEO to appoint at which time. Could you imagine Steve Jobs meeting with Donald Trump and Donald Trump is attacking him? The meeting wouldn't go well. Steve Jobs is the kind of guy who spoke his mind. It would be a very, very short-lived meeting, right? But here you've got a steady hand, more tempered person with a calmer temperament who understands how to endear himself and how to play the soft game of politics. And when you run a business the size of an Apple, that's just the set of hands you need.